Okay, so for today's deep dive, we're going to unpack a psychological phenomenon that is, it's like this invisible engine. It powers almost every decision, every argument, every self-justification you make.
Cognitive dissonance,
Hmm.
or CD for short.
Exactly. And put simply, it's that gnawing feeling, that uncomfortable mental stress we feel when we're holding two conflicting ideas or beliefs or actions at the same time. It's the root of all rationalization.
Right, and this isn't just some modern pop psychology buzzword. This whole framework goes back to the social psychologist Leon Festinger in, 1957?
Yeah, that's right.
In his book, A Theory of Cognitive Dissonance. And the core idea is really simple, but it's so profound. We humans strive for internal consistency. We need it. And if our thoughts and our actions fall out of line,
And you know what you should do, but you do the opposite.
exactly, that misalignment creates this acute pressure that we are just fiercely motivated to get rid of.
So our mission for you listening today is to really dig into the mechanics of that mental stress. We want to understand the psychological architecture of how we rationalize. We're going to look at the classic kind of surprising studies that first prove this tension even exists,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll follow that trail to see how it impacts everything. I mean, from why you buy certain products to how you justify political views, and even down to how your brain processes emotional safety.
Well, when Festinger first laid this out, he talked about the relationships between your cognitions, which is just a fancy word for any of your beliefs, your actions, feelings, ideas.
Okay.
You can think of it like a mental balance sheet. If your thoughts and actions are balanced, that's consonance. So let's say you decide you want to lose weight, and then you refuse a slice of cake. Balance.
Right. And if the information is totally unrelated, like you want to lose weight and you notice the sky is blue, that's just irrelevant. No conflict there.
But the moment you grab that slice of cake anyway, knowing it directly conflicts with your goal, that's the dissonant relationship. And that's where the psychological debt kicks in. The discomfort starts immediately.
So how bad the feeling is. That depends on how important the beliefs are, right?
Exactly. It depends on two things. How important those conflicting ideas are to you personally, and the ratio of good reasons versus bad reasons for what you did. If you violate a core value, the tension is just enormous.
That's the key thing. Breaking a small rule is a blip. But if you violate who you think you are, your core identity, your brain basically goes into crisis mode to fix it.
And when that crisis hits, we don't just sit there in the discomfort. We have this immediate 4-step toolkit we use to fix it. These are the pillars of rationalization.
The first one is, I guess, the most adaptive way to handle it. You just change the behavior or the cognition.
Right. You ate the cake and you decide, okay, no more cake. You just change the action moving forward. Simple.
But if you can't or won't change the action, then you move to step 2. Justify the behavior by changing the conflicting cognition. So you start to bend the rules.
Yeah, this is the, well, I'm allowed to cheat my diet once in a while. It's okay on a Tuesday kind of thinking.
Or, number 3, you justify the behavior by adding new cognitions. You basically try to cancel out the bad action with a new good one.
The classic mental accounting. I ate the cake, but I'll spend an extra 30 minutes at the gym to work it off.
And the fourth one. This is where things get really problematic, especially in politics and social life.
Yeah.
You just ignore or deny any information that conflicts with your beliefs.
If the facts don't fit, you reject the facts. Confirmation bias, selective perception. This is where they live.
And that mechanism, that impulse to ignore stuff, it has a formal name, right? Selective exposure.
It's a hugely powerful dissonance reduction strategy. It means we actively, we curate our reality. We pick the media, the news, even the friends that fit with what we already believe or how we're feeling. And we actively avoid anything that might challenge us.
There was that study with elderly residents in a retirement home. That's just a perfect example of this.
Oh, yeah, fascinating one. So researchers showed them documentaries. Some featured very happy, successful elderly people, and others featured unhappy, lonely ones.
And you'd think intuitively that the lonely residents would want to watch the happy people, for inspiration or something.
You would think so, but they didn't. They overwhelmingly preferred watching the media that showed the unhappy, lonely person.
Wow.
Because they were already in a dissonant state, I am lonely, versus here's proof that people my age can be happy. Watching the happy people just made their own discomfort worse. It was so much more comfortable, more consonant to watch something that aligned with the mood they were already in.
Wow. It's amazing how hard our brain will work to just keep facts out if those facts create stress.
It's a protective mechanism.
So this whole theory really got its legs because of some Truly shocking, counterintuitive experiments. Let's dig into the most famous one, the induced compliance paradigm, or as it's better known, the lying for a dollar study.
Ah, yes. The legendary 1959 Festinger and Carl Smith experiment. This is a classic. They had students perform these incredibly boring, tedious, repetitive tasks like turning pegs on a board over and over for an hour. It was designed to be as mind-numbing as possible.
It sounds like a mild form of psychological torture, to be honest.
It had to be. To make sure everyone agreed on the baseline belief, this task is objectively terrible. Then, after the hour was up, the researchers asked them to do something deceptive. They had to tell the next participant, who was secretly an actor, that the task was actually really interesting and engaging.
And the twist was how much they got paid for telling this lie.
Exactly. That was the critical variable. There were 3 groups. One group was paid $20 for the lie, a pretty good sum back then.
Sure.
The second group was paid a measly $1, and a control group wasn't asked to lie at all.
So the big question is, when they were interviewed later, how did they really feel about the task? I mean, logic says they should all still think it was awful, but the results they turned everything upside down.
Completely upside down. The group that was paid just $1 rated the boring task as significantly more interesting than the group paid $20.
Wait, say that again. Less money made them like the task more.
Exactly. In fact, the $20 group rated the task pretty much the same as the control group, who didn't lie at all. They still thought it was boring.
Okay, so why? Why would a lower reward lead to a higher belief in something that was so awful? This is the core of it, isn't it?
This is the core of dissonance theory. For the $20 group, the money provided sufficient external justification for the lie. Their thinking was, I'm an honest person, but I lied for $20. That's a good chunk of change, so it was worth it. The dissonance was low.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the $1 group had insufficient compensation. They faced this huge, acute dissonance. I am an honest person versus I just lied for a single pathetic dollar.
That's a huge internal conflict. It's not worth selling your integrity for a buck.
Exactly. So to resolve the intense discomfort, they had to change their internal belief. They unconsciously convinced themselves that the task actually was kind of interesting.
Wow.
They resolved the tension by thinking, I wasn't really lying. I actually did find it kind of enjoyable. They changed their belief to justify their behavior.
That is it's profound. And it explains so much, like why people who go through really painful hazing rituals for a club become its most devoted members.
Yes. Or someone who spends a fortune on a car that keeps breaking down. They have to justify the pain or the cost, so they become the fiercest defender of that car or that club. They change their belief to match the sacrifice.
We see a similar thing with the forbidden behavior paradigm, but with kids, right?
The 1963 Aronson and Carl Smith study, they told a group of kids not to play with a really cool, desirable toy. I think it was a steam shovel.
Okay.
One group of kids was given a severe threat if they touched it. The other group, just a mild threat.
Let me guess. Based on the last study, the mild threat, the insufficient justification, is going to cause a weird result.
You're on the right track. Initially, neither group played with the toy. But later, when the threat was removed, the kids who had only received the mild threat were the ones who were less likely to play with the steam shovel.
That seems so backwards. A mild threat is less of a deterrent? Shouldn't they have rushed right back to it?
That's the counterintuitive power of dissonance. For the mild threat group, the threat wasn't a good enough reason for them to deny themselves this awesome toy. So, to reduce that dissonance, they convinced themselves, you know what, that toy wasn't so great anyway, it's not even worth playing with. They devalued the thing they couldn't have.
Whereas the severe threat group just thought, I still want that toy. I just couldn't play with it then.
Precisely. Their justification was external, so their internal belief about the toy didn't need to change.
Our brains are constantly negotiating with reality just to make us feel okay about our choices. It's wild. And it can lead to beliefs getting stronger even when they're proven wrong.
That's belief disconfirmation. This came from Festinger's study of that apocalyptic cult that believed a spaceship was coming to save them.
And the spaceship didn't show up.
Yeah.
That's got to be the ultimate level of dissonance.
I mean, absolutely acute. They'd given away all their stuff, quit their jobs. So instead of admitting they were wrong, they just reframed the failure. They announced that their faith had actually saved the world, and the aliens gave Earth a second chance.
And they started trying to recruit more people.
Even more aggressively. The contradictory fact strengthened their commitment because they had to justify the enormous personal investment they'd already made.
So this all brings us from, simple cognitive dissonance to a more advanced idea that describes the process of how we do all this justifying, motivated reasoning.
Right. It's not just about reducing stress anymore. It's about actively steering our thinking towards a conclusion we want to be true. It's how we use that toolkit of rationalization,
So when we're thinking about something, we basically have two goals. The first one is an accuracy goal.
which is when you're genuinely motivated to be correct. You slow down, you process deeply, you try to reduce your biases, you're acting like a scientist,
And the second one is a directional goal.
which is when you're motivated to arrive at a particular conclusion. Now you're acting like a lawyer, building the best possible case for a client you already believe in. You go looking for the evidence that supports the outcome you want.
But there's a constraint, right? We can't just make things up out of thin air. We have to maintain this illusion of objectivity.
That's the critical piece. You construct what feels like a reasonable justification, even if you have to ignore a ton of conflicting information to do it. We have to preserve this idea that we're being objective, even when our motivation is clearly steering the entire process.
Which leads to a really uncomfortable truth about us, doesn't it? We often only search for the truth as a last resort. It's just easier to stick with a comfortable deception than to face a messy or painful reality.
Think about it in a personal argument. It's so much more comfortable to tell yourself, I was only thinking of you and trying to help, when the painful truth might be, I was mainly thinking of myself. The deception reduces the immediate dissonance of confronting your own selfishness.
And we see this everywhere, especially when core habits are challenged, like the meat paradox.
That's a great example. The conflict between enjoying meat and also loving animals, it creates huge tension for a lot of people. So how do you resolve it? You find ways to reduce the dissonance. You might deny the animal suffering or minimize it or create justifications like, well, humans are at the top of the food chain.
We see the same thing with smoking.
Absolutely. Smokers know the health risks, so they have to reduce that dissonance. They adopt what are called functional beliefs, like smoking calms me down, it's essential for my stress. Or risk minimizing beliefs, like, smoking is no more risky than driving a car every day.
They adjust their beliefs to match their actions because changing the action itself, quitting, is just too hard.
And we saw a very modern, sharp example of this during the pandemic with something researchers called the hypocrisy paradigm.
Right, there was this massive gap.
A huge gap. At certain points, you had 80 to 90% of U.S. adults agreeing that masks and distancing were necessary, but only about 50% said they were actually doing it consistently.
So that's the definition of acute dissonance.
Yeah.
A huge gap between a stated belief and an actual behavior.
And researchers tried to leverage that. They'd have people write statements supporting mask use and then immediately ask them to reflect on their own failures to do it. The goal was to activate that tension, hoping their motivated reasoning would push them to change their behavior.
So if this is all about internal conflict and stress, where is this actually happening in the brain?
Yeah, the fMRI studies on this are fascinating. When that conflict arises, it immediately lights up the anterior cingulate cortex, or the ACC. You can think of the ACC as the brain's internal conflict monitor. It's the alarm system.
So the alarm bell goes off. What happens next? Does the brain carefully weigh the options?
This is the amazing part. The process of rationalization of justifying the action happens incredibly fast. The neural activity linked to reducing the dissonance happens within seconds, often without any conscious thought. Your brain is just rushing to shut off that alarm.
It's prioritizing comfort and speed over accuracy.
Yes, and that instantaneous rush to resolve things connects directly to the latest research on emotion and safety. We don't just discover our emotions, our brain actively constructs them through prediction.
Okay, unpack that.
When we feel we're at relational risk, like if we express a complex emotion, we might get criticized or shamed. The brain defaults to speed and defense. It compresses all this messy, raw emotional data into a quick, familiar, safe label, like labeling complex grief as just anger. It's called rapid closure.
And the opposite happens when we feel safe.
Exactly. When you're in a state of relational safety, like in therapy or a really supportive relationship, it allows for delayed closure. The brain can tolerate the uncertainty. It can stay with the raw, conflicting data, the shifting body sensations, the multiple feelings pulling you in different directions. The ACC alarm can stay on a little longer.
And that lets you process the ambiguity without rushing to a simple, comfortable answer.
Right. And that delayed closure is what actually lets us update our mental models and leads to much more flexible, adaptive emotional regulation over time.
So to sort of wrap up our deep dive here, Cognitive dissonance is that foundational engine of psychological tension, driving us to fix things when our beliefs and actions are out of sync.
And motivated reasoning is the complex rapid-fire mechanism we use to do it. We build a plausible justification, that illusion of objectivity, for the conclusion we wanted all along. Our brain needs to construct a logical story, even if it's a very selective one.
The power of directional goals, just the raw desire to be right or to feel comfortable, is incredible. And to think the neural activity for rationalizing it all happens in seconds is, well, it shows how motivated illusions can be dangerous, guiding our decisions away from reality.
So think about this as you go through your day. The need for true accuracy usually leads to deep, slow, effortful processing. But the desire to confirm what you already believe, that happens through rationalization that kicks in almost instantly to give you psychological comfort.
So here's the final thought for you to chew on. Given that your mind can build a self-serving case almost instantly, how often are you truly giving yourself the safety and time for deep, accurate processing? And how often are you just assembling a quick, comfortable argument for a conclusion you'd already decided on? Something to think about the next time you feel that little gnawing tension of dissonance.